Hello everybody, Josh12 back here again with another video, and I'm here with my official review for Vinyl Episode 1 titled Pilot. Now, of course, if you haven't seen this episode, please go check it out because this review may contain spoilers. But that being said, let's get into the season premiere to HBO's newest original program, Vinyl. Now, when I first heard about this show, I really had zero interest in it because I'm not really big on TV shows, or at least I'm not really big on stories about characters that don't really have that much of a dramatic plot and who basically have a very Scarface mentality where they have so much power and then we just watch their decline. Because we've seen that multiple times before in multiple other movies and storylines, so when I heard about this show, I really had no interest. But then when I thought about it and when I looked at the trailers, it's a freaking HBO TV show that's created, produced, written and directed by Martin Scorsese and Mick Jagger. I mean, that's a TV show I have to freaking check out. And of course I checked out the premiere for the season, which was a very admirable 2-hour premiere for the pilot episode, which was directed by the legend himself, Martin Scorsese. And of course the overall story of what the episode is, and not to mention the entire series is, which follows the, record producer slash record owner of Richie Finestra, played by Bobby Cannavale, and he basically it follows his story of him going up to, upping up the ranks and becoming the big, powerful record producer that he becomes, and, record company owner of American Century Records and what have you, and his story of how he becomes this person, not to mention his story and trying to continue to keep his company from decline and all that kind of stuff, and trying to find new artists to sign on deals with, and a whole bunch of other crazy stuff with his personal life. And it's very Martin Scorsese-esque. If you've ever watched Martin Scorsese films, then you can kind of get the general gist of what the story slash TV show is trying to be like. And for me personally, after watching the 2-hour premiere, for those of you who are like, what's the show kind of like? Basically, it's like if you took like the period piece aesthetics of like Boardwalk Empire and you mixed it and boiled it and blended it with a makeover of The Wolf of Wall Street, and you threw it out there into a TV show on HBO. That's basically what this show is. It's basically that mixed with this, and it has that Martin Scorsese rock and roll, Rolling Stones feel to it. Ironically enough, because Mick Jagger's a part of it, which he had a lot of influence when it comes to the music and, of course, the history of music when it came to this TV show. So it has a lot of really interesting mixtures. It has like your classic Scorsese films. It has the HBO, stamp on it. And of course it has a lot of, very heavily influenced music styles into the show, which is really cool. But with that being said and done, the show also stars some other really cool, interesting, casting choices. Like we have Ray Romano in there as like the sidekick character, if you will, which is pretty hilarious. We also have Olivia Wilde playing the wife character, and we also have Juno Temple in there, who is also really great. And we have Mick Jagger's son also in this show, who plays, like, I guess he's going to be the leading musical act of this show, and how we see him progress through the series, which is going to be interesting as well. And we also got Andrew Dice Clay, guest starring in this episode, which the only reason I mention it is mostly due to the fact that I don't want to spoil too much in this review, but all I can really say is that Andrew Dice Clay's role in this TV show, specifically this first episode, was my favorite thing that he's ever done in the last several years. He's so freaking crazy and hilarious in this freaking... I mean, it's the Dice Man. It was so freaking awesome to see him go crazy in a Martin Scorsese setting. That's something you don't see every day. So that alone should admit you to actually watch the TV show. But with that being said, everyone else is also really great. Ray Romano is freaking awesome. It's good to see him in a freaking Martin Scorsese setting as well. But it's also cool to see him do more TV shows and what have you. And Juno Temple, I've been a huge fan of hers for the last several years. So it's really cool to see her do stuff. The only problem I have with her character, if I do have to nitpick, has to be, I guess, the fact that she's a little too superficial for the time. I mean, the time period is the 1970s New York, and it's supposed to have that setting of like 1970s music and, music culture. But at the same time, like, I really wanted to see her do something different than stereotypical chick of that time that they kind of written her into. So, but with that being said, it is cool to see her in a part of this project, and I think she flourishes very well, and it's really cool to see her in stuff, at least for me. And of course, Olivia Wilde's also nice, but I don't really have a good idea of where she's coming from. It's very odd. I can definitely tell that with future episodes, there's going to be a drift or some kind of rift between the character of Richie and her character, and how they depart in some kind of way, but they are man and wife, so it's going to be interesting to see how that goes into future episodes. But overall, the episode is pretty well done. It's obviously amazingly well crafted by Scorsese. The music is just phenomenal. You can tell Mick Jagger really wanted to make sure that there was variant styles of rock and roll, punk, soul, blues, just a whole bunch of variant, interesting musical just instruments and styles thrown into this freaking episode, which was really cool and awesome. And it's just really funny. I also really enjoy it. It has that Wolf of Wall Street kind of humor where it's just like the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and a lot of freaking cocaine, and a lot of really incredibly stupid, sexy chicks. So if you enjoyed that style of Scorsese and what he's kind of heading towards with his last ventures, then this is a show for you. But if there's also another thing that I really did not enjoy with this show is that it's very slowly paced. It takes a long time for you to get the general grasp of what the show's going to be about or the story. It's very slow paced. Granted, I feel like Terrence Winter, who is also a co-creator and co-writer of the TV show, should have condensed the pilot episode into a much more reasonable time slot, or at least time length, because in my personal opinion, the greatness about TV shows is that it feels like you're watching a mini movie every week. But if you're just watching a straight up movie, then why couldn't you just have this show just be a movie? Because the episode pilot is 2 hours long. And it has a lot of content and a lot of hits and beats and plot points that you have to keep up with, which is very difficult when you just want to just sit down, relax, and binge. And that's the beauty about TV shows that this show doesn't really have, because it's so slowly paced and it's so hard to really follow sometimes. And not that I'm trying to say like the writing is just so brilliantly written that it's hard to follow. It's just that there's so much content, so many characters, so many time that's passing by. It's hard to follow. Not to mention the fact that there's other real things that don't realistically make sense in the time period that they're in, which I felt like was kind of weird. Like the ending, I don't want to spoil it, but the way the episode ends just felt unrealistic. I'm pretty sure something like that did happen, but in the setting of the story, it doesn't really make that much sense. And also, I really feel like they didn't really try that hard to really make it feel like this was a 1970s setting. It has the aesthetic and it has that Scorsese flavor, but it almost felt like, if you look closely, when they take shots of the actual city itself, it felt like they were just taking shots and footage and like reels of footage that were unused or probably used in previous movies of the 1970s. Like there's a specific shot where Richie is riding in a car. Spoiler if you haven't seen it, but there's a specific scene where Richie's riding in his car and he's having some problems, obviously, and he's trying to find the next big thing, and he's just riding in the streets, and as he's going down, the radio's playing, there's variant, musical artists that are playing, and he looks outside into the city, and when you when you look at the city, it looks like a shot that was ripped right out of Taxi Driver. Now, granted, it is a Scorsese film, and it is a Scorsese TV show, so he could do that if he wants to, but I just felt like that was a little lazy, where it's like you just took footage from previous films you did, and you just threw it into this TV show, and that's a cool throwback, I guess, but it just feels off-putting, and it doesn't feel like this world that's in the car doesn't feel like the world that's outside. It's two different time periods. It just doesn't feel right. I guess that's the way I feel, but that's just my personal problem with it. But at the end of the day, it is an enjoyable show. I don't feel like I have to definitely watch more episodes to get a full grasp of the TV show, and definitely A lot of that has to do with the fact that it was a little too long. I mean, I feel like 2 hours is just too long. I mean, granted, I love Scorsese and I love the people he works with, but I feel like this show or this episode alone should have just been condensed to an hour instead of 2 hours. It was just too long, at least for my taste. I mean, granted, other shows do that sometimes with their premieres, but usually it's not one full episode. It's usually like 2 episodes that have been combined to one. This is just like a movie that they were like, we don't really want to show this in theaters. Let's just put it into a TV show. That's what it kind of feels like. So, at the end of the day, let me know what you personally think. My final verdict for this TV show is a solid 7 out of 10. It's a good, enjoyable, fun ride, and it's definitely a show that you should definitely binge watch with some friends or with some family, and it's classic Scorsese. So, of course, if you're into that, then you're going to love this. But I don't feel like at this certain point in time, it's definitely not a TV show that you should dedicate your lives to, like other TV shows like The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones or something like that. But it is enjoyable, it's very historically interesting when it comes to the music industry, and it's really cool to see the ins and outs of the records producing side and the musical artist side. It's really cool to see that, because usually we always see the music artist side of the story, and we never see the record producer side of the story, so it's kind of cool how they flipped it. So, but with that being said and done, performances are cool, the style is interesting, Scorsese's killing it, I love his tricks, the way he directs is just always phenomenal, but at the end of the day, it's not an episode that really blew me out of the water, but it was a pretty good pilot, so let me know what you personally think. And of course, the Dice Man, he freaking cometh, and he kicked ass. But with that being said and done, comment below and let me know what you personally think about this episode pilot premiere, and what are your personal thoughts on the show going forward. And of course, what did you think? If you watched it, let me know in the comment section below. With that being said, shameless plug time. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Josh12. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And hope you guys enjoyed. And this has been Josh12.